But if you hear that one sounding, you should move. And don't stay in Boston. It will be underwater. This was a repurposing of street furniture. So there's lots of ideas out there about how do we take the physical infrastructure of the city and hack it or repurpose it in some way. So if you look on the left there, you can see the electrical box. You've probably seen these a million times and never looked at it because it's sort of this gray mass that's kind of probably blocking your way as you walk on the sidewalk. But the idea was to put a hinge at the bottom and some wood slats on it and to turn it into a bench so that you could push it over and sit on it. Simple idea. It's turning out to be like an engineering challenge. I was going to say an engineering challenge, but it's a great idea. So we'll write about that. Another project that we've done in the space is this. This was the Pulse of the City. The idea here was to blend physical infrastructure with public art, or public infrastructure with public art rather. And so this project is going to be fun. But it was about the size and shape of a parking meter. So you would walk up to it and put your hands on the copper handles there, and it would play music in sync with your heartbeat. And so in this way, our intention was to be playful around thinking about health issues, but also to get people to experiment with the physical infrastructure that you see embedded in the city itself, in the streets. The reason we're not doing this anymore is that these were decapitated. So someone came along, as you can see there, the little neck is not terribly well reinforced. That was like the beta version, but even in the hardened version, someone took a bat or something and took his head off. I know, right? So 2, do the impossible. Work on problems that matter to people. There's the danger for those of us working, at the intersection of the public and the public sector around technology to take on the problems, like the low-hanging fruit problems, right? The things that are most obviously solvable by technology. But I think that can very easily lead you down a path of just not being relevant. And so being relevant is a key touchstone for us, and I think for this kind of space in general, civic technology. Here's an example. So if you were a Boston Public School parent up until 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, this is what you had to read to register your kid for school. Honestly, this is not a good user experience. And more than that, it used to prevent people from registering their kids on time. And so that is an equity problem. So we couldn't let that stand. And we got very clear instructions from our residents that this can no longer stay. It can no longer stay in this format. And so we worked with Code for America originally to rebuild the system into this. So this is called Discover. And as you can see, it's a fairer site, better than this. And the metaphor here essentially is to use like a hotels.com kind of view into schools, so that you as a parent can explore your schooling options in a more elegant way and save your preferences and compare all those kinds of things that you would expect that sort of a person would expect in the 21st century. Here's another project that we did. It's called Where's My School Bus? And it does exactly what you think it does, right? So it tells you, as a parent, where your kid's school bus is. Now, this is not revolutionary technology. It's basically just pulling GPS. But this is not a piece of tech that you would use every day. This is the sort of thing that you only use when there's an emergency, right? And so this is, in fact, a piece of technology that can only, in a lot of ways, only be created by government. Because a regular startup isn't going to see, there's not going to be a lot of value here in an app that people run maybe just a handful of times in a year. But we are well positioned to instead sort of focus on the very specific use cases. Because again, our intent here is to reduce people's stress, to reduce people's anxiety in their lives and how they navigate the city. This was an important piece of technology for us. And it led to these little moments, right? So, as I said, a big part of what we're trying to do here is to build trust with the public. And as you can see, this was a tweet that we got from a resident, and she's basically saying that the bus is late yet again, but I'm slightly less annoyed because of Where's My School Bus? So that may not seem like revolutionary, but I think it is in a lot of ways. Because to me, what this says is that we are beginning to reset the relationship between residents and local government by thinking about the user interface. And so I think this is really powerful. Here's the last pattern that I wanted to share. Do the unthinkable, right? So there's a lot of stuff that people just would never conceive of. that governments could take on, right? There's a whole range of things out there that, if you're framing around government and government services, it's faster, better, cheaper. There's stuff that you would imagine is just outside of the circle. And we think it's important to push that envelope because in order for us to take on those issues that I showed at the top of the slides, the climate change and so on, we can't think in the way that we used to about what we do and what we don't do. So we have to explore the edges of what's possible for local government. So this is a project that we did a couple of years ago. It's still up and running. It's called Citizens Connect. And it's fairly common now. This kind of technology. Basically, it's an app that allows you to send in a request for service to the city. You see a pothole, you see graffiti, snap, it goes in, grabs your GPS location, and then you'll get some notifications back when it's been received by the city, and then also when it's been closed. And what this has allowed us to do, this was a big success for us in terms of developing a new piece of technology that people would actually want to use. And it's evolved over time. And so it's allowed us to explore a whole range of different ideas. Now, this is not the standard way that big institutions work. Big institutions typically don't think in terms of iterative experiments that evolve over time and really treat them as experiments. But we've done a whole range of things. So the original idea with Citizens Connect was that it was you as an individual reporting things into the city. But what we began seeing as we looked at the comments that we got back was that people wanted to see what the community was reporting. And so the next version became a more communal app, a more social piece of technology. And then we began seeing that people were asking us about, why do I have to press anything at all? Why couldn't it all be automated? And so we began experimenting with this piece of technology called Street Mode. And it sort of takes the premise to the next level, where the idea here is rather than you seeing things reporting, it's an app that you run on your phone and it will automatically capture the accelerometer readings off of your smartphone, and essentially will do some machine learning and data mining on it to determine whether when you've hit the signature of a pothole, something that needs to be fixed. So it's been great for us because it's sort of been picked up by all these different news outlets, and I think it's really served as a beacon for this city and I think for other cities about where we can go when we're thinking outside the box about what is possible for local government. Here's the last example that I'll share. Another thing that local government doesn't do, or city halls typically don't do well, is to play with others. And so this is the young woman there on the left in the white pants. That's Sandra Richter, a former MIT student, grad school student, and the rest of her team. That's the beta version of a product that she developed called, it's now called SUPA. It's sort of a solar-powered bench / phone charging station. And, it was a cool concept, cool product that she developed. At that stage, it was very experimental. The challenge to her was, how did she get cities to use them and to deploy them, especially mid-sized cities or sort of mid to large-sized cities like Boston, in which you've got unions, you've got RFPs and crazy bureaucratic nonsense that prevent innovation from coming in. So what we were able to do is to form a collaborative partnership between Sandra and her team and these guys, the Profs Apartment, right? A group of people that aren't known necessarily for being innovative, but in this case, essentially by helping them to kind of deal with the risk elements of the project and to show how it actually adds value for our residents, we were able to pull this off. And so these things are what started going into the ground a couple of months ago, and they're up and running, I think, 7 different parks across the city, and we'll be expanding the program moving forward. And for us, this is really an experimentation in physical infrastructure. And so, that is everything that I had. If you have questions about any of this, I'd love to hear them. Thank you. Sure.
Are you measuring usage of the LEDs?
We do. We do extensive data capture on everything that we create or that we collaborate with. Yeah.
When you guys roll something out like the charter filter, you guys have a live plan as well, maybe?
Yeah. So these are all experiments, they say. So we essentially have success metrics that we look at that we'll use to determine whether or not we want to do more of them. or less for that matter. And so in this case, the question for us is, if this works, do we imagine folding some element of this into all parks, park benches, for example? And so the individual SUPA may go away, but maybe the core technology will stick around. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for adoption. We're looking as to whether people actually use this thing, and if they like the experience.
Let's say 5 years from now, it stops working.
No, yeah, we make sure that they're working. So, and if they, so that if the program stops working, or the product stops working, or individual units stop working, we get rid of them, or we fix them. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. So it's a good question. So the question was, what are some interesting projects that we're not able to do, and why not? I think we are not able to do big projects, and in part that's part of our design, right? That our job is to do small scale things at the scale of them up if they're successful. It's often the challenge for us is really in lining up the opportunity. So if you as an innovator come to us with a particular project, pitch, whatever it is, we have to find a way to line up what you're pitching with a need that the city has, right? And sometimes you can't quite make that line up. And so there's a lot of things that we would love to do in education. There's a lot of cool stuff we would love to do around sustainability that we can't quite line it up. And so it's part of the challenge that we face. And there's also a need then also for someone on the city side to be a partner for you, right? No matter what you're doing, if you're working with us, you need, if it is education, for example, you'll need to make sure that the school or principal or someone that is willing to work with you. And that can often be another gate, if that person doesn't exist. So those are some of the issues that we face.
How do you manage disillusionment versus keeping enthusiasm there? So people decapitate your beautiful apartments and machine.
Yeah.
Everybody reports potholes and it's so cool, but then the potholes don't get fixed.
Yeah.
How do you kind of manage that?
Sure. I mean, in the case of for Citizens Connect, making sure, I think everything for us is driven by the user experience. So if you as a user are using some of our technology, especially for one that's designed for collaboration essentially, and if we don't actually fix whatever it is, it's a bad user experience. And so we do everything that we can to make sure that you feel as though the experience was worth having. And that also means then sometimes that there are things that we won't put on the platform. So, like any big institution, once we started getting a lot of people using Citizens Connect, they said, great, that was awesome. Let's dump this on there. Let's put all these other things on there. But what was pretty clear to us when we dug into some of these ideas was that there was no way to really manage the expectations of our users or kind of provide them with an adequate level of feedback, follow through, and so we kept those things out. And so we tend to be pretty maniacal and obsessive about listening to our users and using that to drive what we do or don't do. For something like, for Pulse of the City when I decapitated, we were kind of bummed, but it was an experiment, and we learned something, namely in this case, that they need to be hardened. So everything for us is about learning and doing. Back there?
To your point about having to match the project with the city's needs,
Yep.
sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yep.
What is your source for identifying those needs? Like, are you saying, I live here, potholes suck, I know they suck, so let's fix it? Or does the city come to you and say, we hate potholes, how do we fix this? What is at the beginning of the process?
Sure. So we do our best to keep our eyes and ears open to everything in the city in terms of issues that are being faced by particular communities or by institutions. And so listening to our residents to understand what they like or don't like in general about their communities, their neighborhoods, the infrastructure, that's a big source of prioritization for us. Then looking at issues that are, the city is facing in terms of all those same issues is another important source for us to figure out how do we line these things up. And then finally, at the end of the day, we still are a government institution that with a mayor, with the chief executive, and so at the end of the day, the mayor is essentially setting those priorities. But it works pretty well because we have had and currently have an urban mayors that have a pretty good sense to what their communities are cared about, and if they don't know, the Bostonians are very vocal about what they like or don't like, and so we hear it pretty fast. Anybody else? Great, thanks very much. I would leave you one last thought, that if any of you, creative people, have ideas, pitches that you would love to see, the changes to the streetscape, anything regarding the physical layout of the city, or the informational layout of the city, please let us know. You can find us on New Urban X, or you can Google us, New Urban Mechanics, but we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.